to our latest episode of the Movie Crusaders. My name's Sean Wasserkrug, and today we're going to be reviewing Clerks 3. Now, for me, I am, for the most part, a big fan of USQ. I love Kevin Smith, I love Jay and Silent Bob, and the Clerks series, or trilogy, I guess now, the first Clerks film, I didn't get to see this until way older, in terms of when it got released, so I didn't have that Clerks nostalgia. I learned about Clerks, much like how I learned about Mallrats, through Jay and Silent Bob, and not from those movies themselves. So basically, like, after Jay and Silent Bob Strikes Back and Dogma and those movies came out, did I actually go back and start seeing Clerks and Mallrats. And for me, I think because of that, I don't have this loving affinity for the first Clerks film as I do other movies, because of the artistic approach to it and how it was more of an indie film. It just, while it has its moments, it wasn't something that I generally loved. I liked it, but I didn't necessarily love it. But when Clerks 2 came out, I loved that film. I thought it was super funny. I loved, like, while the friendship of Jeff Anderson and Brian O'Halloran's Randall and Dante in Clerks 1 was solid throughout the film, I feel like their basic chemistry in Clerks 2 hit harder, was funnier, and definitely had more added weight to it. Now, granted, they had a whole other film previously to do that. Plus, you added Trevor Furman for Elias, which I thought him and Randall's back and forth in Clerks 2 was hilarious, and also, of course, Rosario Dawson, as well as Jay and Silent Bob. And Clerks 2 is easily one of my favorite View Askew films. I can still go back and listen or watch that movie and basically laugh myself to tears. So I was relatively excited for Clerks 3 to come out because I love those characters now and everyone involved. And I know what the general plot was. I knew this was going to be strongly based around Kevin Smith's heart attack. And, except this time it's going to be based on those characters, which the main general plot for Clerks 3 is that Randall has a heart attack and basically decides that life is too short and that he wants to make a movie based on his life, aka Clerks, and do something with his life that he hasn't done anything yet. And that's basically what the general plot of Clerks 3 is them basically making the film of the first Clerks movie with everyone that was there for the first film overall. Now, that kind of nostalgia can either work for you or work against you based off of how the writing is and direction of Kevin Smith. Now, Kevin Smith is a very smart director, and he knows how important these characters are to him and to the people that watch this series of the View Askews, and he does handle them, for the most part, incredibly well. The problem that lies in Clerks 3, at least for me, is I understand that these characters are incredibly important to Kevin Smith and to everyone who is a part of the View Askew verse and through these first two films of the franchise. But the limitations of these actors are not up to the caliber of some of the other actors that Kevin Smith has worked with and written for, and we know that. We know that going into the Clerks movies. We know Jeff Anderson and Brian O'Halloran, who I love as Dante and Randall, are not great actors. I don't want to watch them in other films trying to be other characters. I don't want to watch them in dramatic film roles. I want to watch them as Dante and Randall because they're funny, they've got great banter. I know their limitations. Problem is with Clerks 3 is that Kevin Smith, because of how powerfully passionate he is about the closing of this trilogy, he has made this movie more dramatic than any of the previous films. And while there is a lot of funny moments and there's a lot of good laugh out loud moments, the drama ends up coming off very melodramatic, especially around, I would say, the Dante character of Brian O'Halloran and even Jeff Anderson's Randall. And they, for me, just do not have the acting capabilities in order to pull off some of these scenes. There's one scene in particular, I'm not going to describe the scene in any way because it's a spoiler, that Dante's character is trying his best to basically give an Oscar-worthy performance, and he just does not have that kind of caliber. And it honestly kind of comes off very soap opera-ish and almost kind of just, I don't want to say laughable because it's not a laughing moment at all, but the acting's not strong. in that scene, and it goes on for a very long time. There is a moment, though, at the end of the movie, in the third act, where Brian O'Halloran is giving a ton of raw emotion, and he's knocking this scene out of the park. So I don't understand why he was so great in this one scene in the later film, and not so much in this one other important scene earlier in the film. The performances don't match up. Randall, Jeff Anderson, while he still has dramatic moments in the film, they're not up to the caliber, or they're not up to the level of importance as Brian O'Halloran's Dante is throughout the film, based off of where these characters' paths are going. But, I mean, he's solid throughout the film. I don't actually have anything really negative to say about Jeff Anderson. I think when he actually is given dramatic parts of the film, I think he actually hits them very well. But he's not actually given, except for maybe one moment in the film, the extent or the level of difficulty that Dante's character has to go through throughout the movie. One of my favorite parts, like I said, of Clerks 2 was Trevin Furman's Elias. He comes back in this movie. I don't think he's been in a movie since Clerks 2, and boy, does it show. Because I feel like his performance in this movie is atrocious. I love the Elias character, and they do decide to do something a little different with this character this time out. And when I saw that, I was like, this is going to make for some great comedy. And it doesn't. And they beat this joke into the ground probably about 20 times. It's never funny. It's just kind of more of a gag throughout the movie, and never in this moment of ever going, this is great, compared to what I thought of in Clerks 2. There is no Listerine pillow pants. There is no elongated argument about Lord of the Rings and Star Wars. It's just Elias doing the same shtick with his own little version of Silent Bob in the movie, which I think never really made much sense or was ever really that funny, other than just kind of just being weird and annoying that they kept popping up on screen. I love the Elias character, and it's not that he has his moments in the movie, but Trevor, he's clearly not an actor, because he hasn't done anything since Clerks 2. And while Clerks 2, it wasn't like it was an amazing performance, but it gelled well with Brian O'Halloran and Jeff Anderson and Rosario Dawson, to the point where even though he wasn't a great actor, it didn't matter in the flux of Clerks 2. But in this one, his performances really stand out as being just downright awful in the film. Jay and Silent Bob, they're Jay and Silent Bob. They're going to do their shtick. Jay looks a little off in the movie, but he has been the last few films. But his performance is still solid all the way through. If you love Jay, you're going to love Jay. Silent Bob definitely gets a longer speaking role in this, in one particular scene, which just feels like Kevin Smith more than Silent Bob, which I think that's the joke in that, which I was totally fine with. But yeah, they're good in the film. If you love Jay and Silent Bob, you're going to like him in this movie. There are other directions that they do with certain characters in the film that I did not agree with, that I did not want. I thought that they were doing these character decisions based off of availability of the actor or actress in the film, and think, oh, they're doing this because they couldn't get them to come back, or they couldn't get them for as long as we thought they were going to be. But then when they still popped up in the film for a good amount of the time, it kind of made me think, what was the point or the motivation to go with the route of these characters? I get the point and the motivation based off where the story was going, but like I said, I just would have preferred them to be in it more in what the actual crux of the story was than the story that Kevin Smith made for those characters. There are other cameos in the film. There's one elongated scene where they're doing auditions, and that's basically the cameo portion of the film. It's funny for maybe the first 30 seconds to a minute because you're seeing all these cameos and all these actors pop up, but this scene really overstays its welcome and just kind of gets tiring and boring after a while, to the point where you're like, we get it, let's move on. Ultimately, Clerks 3, like I said, it's funny, it's enjoyable. I got emotional near the end of the film. When it kind of all comes down to it, the movie itself just doesn't stand up to the greatness of what the first Clerks film was, or even how much I love Clerks 2. It doesn't even matter with that, because with Clerks 2, that movie's so far from today, and I still fondly remember moments and remember dialogue from that film that still make me laugh and chuckle. And I feel like with Clerks 3, by the end of the month, or even by mid-October, I'm not going to really remember much of the jokes or much of the moments of the film outside of, the main parts of the plot, just like I do with any movie. It's just not memorably funny. Like, it's funny, but it's not going to have moments where I think back like I did with Clerks 2. And that's kind of the disappointing part of Clerks 3. It's a solid film. But up to Clerks' caliber, or even how Kevin Smith has been with the last few Askew films, it just doesn't feel like it's up to par because he tries to make it too dramatic and too much of a passion project of his, which, like I said, I respect it, I get it. It just didn't work for me as much as it's working for a lot of other people and Kevin Smith personally. I respect why he did what he did with it. It just didn't work for me, and it wasn't the movie that I was wanting. Doesn't make it a bad film, but it is the acting and certain character directions in the film that doesn't not make it a great film. And, I mean, if you can remove yourself from the love of the View Askew verse and of these characters and actually look at the movie as what it is as a movie, you will start to see the shortcomings of the film and the badly delivered lines and some of the dialogue of the lines and some of the directions they choose, some of the camera shots that Kevin chooses in the film, which I think he was trying to do throwbacks to the first Clerks film, which if he is, I get that. It was just awkward in the third film after all these years. And bringing back characters from the first film who were not good actors then, they're not good actors now. Ultimately, Clerks 3, if you're a fan of the Clerks franchise, if you're a fan of the View Askew verse, you're gonna enjoy Clerks 3. I enjoyed it. But compared to the rest of the View Askew and the rest of the Clerks films, it is probably it's my least favorite Clerks film, and it's probably my second least favorite View Askew film. That's coming from someone who, for the most part, loves the View Askew movies. So it being second to last still is a good film overall, but for me, it was a disappointment. I'm going to give it a 64%. Don't let this deter you guys from checking this movie out if you're a fan of Clerks or a fan of Jay and Silent Bob or the rest of the View Askew people. I think you're going to enjoy it. I kind of hold these movies a little bit higher in terms of judging because of how much I love Clerks 2 and the rest of View Askew, that it just didn't reach the mark for me. I could watch this movie easily in 6 months from now with my perception differently and end up loving it way more than I do now, or hate it more than I do now. That's the wonder of movies, and that's the wonder of being in the right mindset when you see a movie at certain times. So, like I said, take my review for what it is. Go watch it. Have fun with it. It is kind of doing a limited time showing, so you might have to wait for it to be streaming before you guys can check it out. Unless it is available in your area, which it is, go check it out. It's worth an admission ticket to at least watch it, because there is stuff during the post credits. It's not really a scene. It's more of like dialogue being overplayed by Kevin Smith. And there is like a 20-minute featurette of a behind-the-scenes of Clerks, the shooting of the third film, which is very nice for Clerks and View Askew fans. So feel free to stay after the credits to check that out if you do check this out in theaters. But overall, I hope you guys enjoyed this review. If you guys did, go and hit that like, share, and subscribe button to the channel so you guys stay up to date with all the latest videos pop up on the Movie Crusaders. And of course, don't forget to follow us on all the social media outlets you see below. Coming up next, Brian and I will be back at some point this month to show Movie Crusaders chat about sister/twin movies. Those are movies that are very, very similar that come out within 18 months, aka like Deep Impact, Armageddon. We're going to have an episode about that. We're also going to have a Movie Crusaders chat about the end of summer movies and the look forward to fall, end of the year, where we'll be discussing all the remaining films coming out through the rest of 2022. And then, of course, at the end of September, Brian and I will be back for our Halloween special. We're real excited for that video. We think it's going to be a lot of fun for you guys if you guys watch the channel and follow us like we do. And, of course, all the other movies that come out in September, as soon as I watch them, I will have reviews for you. I'm trying my best to check out Barbarian because I've heard great word of mouth on it. And if I do get that watch, I will have a review set up and ready for you guys. Might not be this weekend because I'm going out of town, but when I come back, there will be a review for Barbarian as fast as I can get it for you guys. But until next time, in case I don't see you, good morning, good afternoon, and good night, Movie Crusaders.
You're still here. It's over. Go home.